I have a fever, and my only cure is more spice. I can't stop thinking about this goddamn movie. It's just, I saw Dune 2 yesterday, and it's just so damn good. And I feel like the only way I can really talk about it is in a kind of just hodgepodge manner, just complete nonsensical, you know? I'm just gonna ramble about this shit because it's really, really good. Like, for starters, Timothée Chalamet, just fucking incredible in this. Just great. Great job, man. Incredible. And terrifying. He goes kind of evil. You know? You see that? That's him going evil mode. And, but... Sorry, I've never really done anything like this. There's just so much I love about this. I'm not gonna act like I'm some big expert in Dune. I read the book and finished it like a few weeks ago. And I mean, I really loved it. But like I'm pretty new to this shit, but I have to say that this is an incredible adaptation. And I mean, Dune is an amazing book. It got me back into reading, for one. And I think that says something because, I mean, I was kind of just... I wasn't really a book reader for a while, you know, but, like, I'm back on that shit now because of Dune. And this movie was just insane. And it makes so many changes, but also it still captures that second half of the book so well, and the changes serve the story, I think, really well, especially for the visual format. It just works really well. And just to start, I mean, I love that the movie starts with Princess Irulan's monologuing, because, like, you know, that's like the big part of every chapter of Dune, is starting with like a sort of historical, textual, like just like a quote that is either in direct relation to what's happening in the chapter or is like thematically relevant to what is going to happen in the chapter. And I thought it was really cool to start it right off the gate with Irulan's thoughts and seeing just the quietness of Christopher Walken. I've seen a lot of hate for Christopher Walken's performance. I don't know if this is like the most common criticism of the film, but I really liked it. I loved his demeanor. I loved how just like decrepit it was, and I loved how nonchalant he was for so much of it. 'Cause and I think he mentions it somewhere in an interview that a long time ago he got advice on how to play like a king, in that it's not really necessarily about how you act, but how everyone else around you acts. And I think that's perfect. It doesn't matter that he's walking around in old man pajamas the entire movie, because he's the emperor of the universe, of the known universe. And also just like this decrepit old guy who's just like power hungry and blind to it all. It just works really great between him and the Harkonnen and Baron Harkonnen. There's a lot of like beautiful kind of just like similarities there. And I know in the book it is kind of different, but I still think it's achieving the same thing. In the book, the Emperor is like 75 years old, but he looks 35. And, you know, he's very cocky and whatnot. He's bold and whatever. And obviously, Christopher Walken, he doesn't look 35. But still, I think the idea is still kind of there because, like, you know, he may look 35, but he isn't 35. He's still an old man, and he's delusional. And that's kind of the same case with Christopher Walken in this film, is that he is just so blind and calm about it, when he just full on admits to Paul just like why he killed Leto, about the heart being weak. It's so calm, and like just he's completely unaware. And yeah, and I know I kind of jumped right into the ending of the movie, but I mean, I do want to talk about the other aspects. So I'll go back to, the opening. The opening. Everything with the Harkonnen, I just absolutely adore. I love that their sci-fi uniforms they're so cool to look at, but they're bulky, they're not that well designed. They're kind of dog shit. They function as like a sort of like prototype still suit. Like they have vents, so they don't really have the same they don't have that same ingenuity that the Fremen have, because they are, at the end of the day, outsiders. This isn't their land and whatnot. And I mean, just the Eclipse look is great. This entire movie looks great. This is, I think, easily my favorite Greg Fraser film, like shot by him. But that's besides the point. This whole deal with... Oh, sorry, I had to move that. Just, yeah, the whole thing. And, like, yeah, watching these guys float is just so cool. The first movie has a similar thing like that, where you see the Sardakar floating down, and it looks creepy. Before I saw the movie yesterday, on the day before, when my dad and I were rewatching part 1, during the sequence where the Sardakar are floating down, he just was like, what the fuck? That's exactly what he said. And it's just like that kind of thing. Like, it's just so bizarre to watch, but it's so cool too. And it's really cool. And just everything, I love the visual language of the Harkonnen. I really do not understand the criticisms regarding Denis Villeneuve's approach to sort of like a brutalist look, especially with like the Fremen still suits. It makes sense for the Fremen to be utilitarian, and they're in the desert, and they use like cloths, and they're very smart with how they use their space and use their clothing. And then you get to the Harkonnen, and they're fucking stumbling around in these clunky ass suits, and it's just a great parallel visually. But just also with the Harkonnen is just like there's this, there's so much. Oh, shoot. I lost the word. I'll get back to it. But there's this artificial sense to them. They live on an artificial world, and even, mentats, these human computers, even then, the Harkonnen mentats, now that Piter's dead, have this very artificial look, and they look more computer than they do man. And I love that. And just everything with the Harkonnen is they're sort of utilitarian like the Fremen, but also like they're just incredible extremes. Everything about the Harkonnen are extremes. Their ideology is extreme, and their designs are extreme. Their ships, when I watched part 1, and part 2 also has plenty of this, I love that the Harkonnen attack ships are just absolutely littered with just guns and missile launchers. It's insane. And you just see it all fly down. And then there's also just the bug-like aspect to their design. Everything about the Getty Prime sequence is great, from the infrared switching and whatnot. But look at these things. These are ticks, man. These are disgusting little ticks, and these also have a kind of a bug-like thing. And then you see their spice harvesters, and they also have a very bug-like quality. They're probably the most tick-like thing of anything. There is this parasitic nature to these bald little fascists. And that was something that I was especially feeling during the initial ornithopter attack, just seeing all those ornithopters take flight was just so cool. But then also, like, the way that they were all synced up, it gave this sort of, like, just hive look to it. It looked like a swarm of, like, locusts, sort of. And I just adored that. There's a lot of just freaky design to the Harkonnen, and it's really, really clever. Can't forget mentioning these guys. The bulls, this is so cool. Because, one, they're like bulls. And there's just some freaky aspect of this. Like, the humans don't really operate like humans on Getty Prime. They're bulls. They're slaves. They're they're just all these. I've never done anything like this. This is a little bit different from everything I usually do on this channel, but I feel like this is the only way I can properly talk about this movie and my initial thoughts of it. But yeah, I mean, just everything about Getty Prime is great, and then it provides this great contrast because, I mean, as the movie progresses and we see Paul become, more than himself, and the similarities between him and the Harkonnen, I feel like maybe this is a bit of a stretch, but I mean, this shot on Getty Prime of all the Harkonnen people coming to celebrate Feyd becoming the Duke of Arrakis, I felt that there was something very similar to how this is, with the crowd parting as Paul is moving through it. These shots are different, obviously. This one kind of looks like a carpet rug, but like I feel like in all the right ways. It makes people look small, and that's the same thing here. And it's very interesting how you can see how, there's visually we are seeing how the Harkonnen and Paul Atreides aren't so different. I mean, Paul is literally Harkonnen. He has Harkonnen. It makes their feud seem almost pointless and completely null. And then also it signifies that he's not a liberator. And he's going to fail these people. He's going to turn these people into weapons, just as the Harkonnen do their own kind. And I feel like that is just really, really cool. Then this is what adaptation is all about. Like, they're taking the words of this book and I noticed this especially with part 1, is how, like, through their mannerisms and whatnot, they still convey, like, all the inner monologue that you're getting from the book. And similar case in part 2. I want to go back to what I was saying about how this film, despite its differences, really still achieves the same thing that the book does in terms of just how fast it is. If you watched part 2 and you noticed how, like, it kind of just flies by, the book is very much the same thing, except in the book there is a giant time skip. There's so much time. What happens in part 2 is like 4 years in the book. And it's intentionally done that way because, you're seeing this culture hijacked. You're seeing everything move so fast. You're seeing Paul stuck in his thoughts and becoming lost in this prophecy that has been created by the Bene Gesserit and whatnot. And, despite, there not being a time skip in this movie, despite, like, it only being, from what I can guess, only a few months since Jessica never gives birth. I'm assuming it is something that only happens over the course of, like, 9 or so months. That fast pace, everything's moving so quick, it works great and stays true to how the book is. Because in the book, the ending is so, like, just nothing. Like, it's just this line of dialogue between Jessica and Chani talking about how they'll be remembered as wives, and that's the end of the book. And, it just, I remember when I read that, I was like, what? Why is there just a glossary now? Why am I reading an appendix now? Where's the Holy War? Where's the rest of the story? Because, like, it's just, everything's moving so fast and you're caught up in all of it. And in a lot of cases, a lot of readers do not see Paul as an anti-hero, at least not at first, because it just moves so fast. Everything happens so quickly, and you're just caught up in all the rush of it. And that's very much the case here, where we see Paul go from being hesitant, not wanting to go to the south, and then he just becomes enveloped in it, because he's so determined that he's going to be something that isn't this horrifying, Messiah. But then he just ends up becoming that, because that is what will get him to where he wants to be. And that is just really, really good. I love it. Oh, man. I really hope people don't hate how I'm talking about this. I want to talk about Jessica, because, oh my God, Rebecca Ferguson, she is evil in this. It's almost comical, but that is in no way like a hate toward it. It's very blunt. Her hijacking of this culture is insane. And that's how it is in the book. And some people are probably upset that, Alia, or however you say it, I've never heard it pronounced, I'm assuming it's pronounced Alia, isn't like a toddler, like how she is in the David Lynch film. And don't get me wrong, that's the best part of the David Lynch movie, but I really love what they do here instead with her talking to this fetus and whatnot, because it's still achieving that same thing with, like, the whole Fremen Reverend Mother, where, like, there's just this blur between individuals. Jessica speaks for her daughter, but, like, part of you can probably be like, is that really even the daughter talking, or is that just Jessica talking and making shit up? But, like, that's just kind of how the Water of Life is in the book, where it's just like all of this collective knowledge is just poured into these individuals. And then you have it with the ritual going wrong and it being that she's pregnant. Now you have, this baby that is just fully developed and has all this knowledge, and it's just weird, and it's just in her, and it's just something evil is brewing. And I love that. The whole Water of Life sequence was just extravagant. I loved it. It reminded me so much of the Stargate sequence from 2001, just seeing this liquid pour in and then also, like, encapsulate the fetus was just so creepy, but, like, awe-inspiring. You couldn't help but look at it, and it's just really cool. And just the way Rebecca Ferguson portrays Jessica in this is incredible. She does what the book does so well, and where it's like you can't tell where the line between extremely protective mother and Bene Gesserit conspiracy really starts to blur, and it really becomes just like you can't see the difference between it. She's still stuck in her Bene Gesserit teachings, but also she's doing it to be a protective mother. She's like the most protective mother to the most extreme extent, and it's really captivating to watch on display. It's just really, really interesting stuff. I love it. I have a feeling if anyone's still watching this by this point, I'm glad that you're getting something out of this, because this is very therapeutic. Just pouring this out is incredible. Let me talk about Rabban. Rabban is Dave Bautista is so good in this. He is great. He is this angry motherfucker. And he's, he just, like, the way he snaps these people's, like, necks and just treats humans like tools, because that's just the Harkonnen way. But, like, also he is so sensitive, and just there's so much fragility to his performance. It's great. And just, like, seeing him just be completely humiliated by his brother, his smaller, freaky brother, is really, really good. And just, I like that they don't, that dynamic doesn't really exist in the book, at least from what I remember. I could be wrong, but they only have like one chapter together. And the movie, I mean, I think they only have a few scenes together, but still, you just get that dynamic, because, like, you have Feyd's incredible ego, and then you just have the fragility of Rabban, where it's like all this anger and all this rage just seems to be like a shield to protect him, because that's just how he's learned to survive, is just by being a bastard about everything. I guess now that's a good way to segue into Feyd. This fucking freak, this performance, I haven't seen Austin Butler in much, and I've heard great things about him, and I've liked what I've seen from him. But this performance, I think this is a generational talent here. This man is a freak in every way, and it doesn't even feel like this is Elvis. This is the guy who can't stop talking like Elvis, but now he sounds like Stellan Skarsgård. He is just incredible in this, and he's, much like his brother, treats people as objects, but there's like so much, there's like this just demented callousness to it. When Rabban rages and kills one of his, lower ranks, when he's going around ravaging through his staff, it's, just this blind anger. But when Feyd's doing it, it's this, there's intention. He's just horrific for the love of the game, for the love of the ball. And I mean, and it's just, there's humor to it. This movie's funny as shit. All right, there's some good bits in this movie, but like the whole bit of Lady Fenring going and testing Feyd, and he just puts his hand in the box, and then it cuts to Fenring on the Emperor's planet, and she's just like, yeah, he liked the box a lot. He's a freak. It's just so funny, and it's just so creepy. He's just such a force of intentional just evil. Like, there's so much to it. Like, the Baron, he's gluttonous and he's power hungry, but just Feyd, he's in it for the love of the game, and I love that. There's so much cockiness to it, but there's like a complete understanding of his love. I guess we should probably talk about Paul, because there is no, Feyd is not compelling without Paul. Paul is so interesting in this movie, because he's this boy, and then he becomes something more, and then he's not wanting it at first, but then he gets this sense of control over it, and he's just kind of done with being scared about it, because he just feels that ownership of it. The scene of him getting on the sandworm was, I got goosebumps. I saw clips of it on Twitter beforehand, but actually being in that theater in 70mm IMAX and watching this happen, it's so captivating. It's so awe-inspiring. And there's this moment, I might be able to find it in post when I'm editing it, but there's this moment where it's the shot of his foot. It's kind of like how in part one there is like, his first steps on the planet's surface. It's kind of like that. It's that same just like awe to it. but now, he's been on Arrakis for a long time, and now he's doing the sandworm thing. And when he's riding this sandworm and he's starting to get a grip of it, he throws the lines, and then there's this shot of his foot. It's so low, and then his foot is like up, and then the ball of his foot, his foot, he puts his feet down, and there's just so much power to that. And that works great because it's this beautiful spectacle, and and that's just the beauty of his character, is that it's so enticing. There's so much charisma behind it. There's so much to like about it. But at the end of the day, this guy he's evil. It's just simple as that. He's evil, but you get caught up in it. You get caught up in the beauty of it all, You're like, oh, look at him go. He's on the worm, and it's just, that is something beautiful. Sorry, I was checking, making sure that was still recording. But yeah, you get caught up in it all. This film is a spectacle. I probably haven't been saying that enough, but this film, it's so cool. And that's just, the coolness factor of this movie, that is something that is really true to the book. And that, that is how, charismatic leaders are probably some of the most dangerous people ever. You get wrapped up in these great men and whatnot, and then you hardly realize that the horrors, you don't peep the horror enough. And oh my God, everyone on this cast is beautiful, man. Look at them all, man. This guy, how? Became bald. It's insane. I guess I'm probably close to wrapping up. I don't know, though. And, this movie, it really, it wouldn't be what it is without...
Listen again!
Without Stilgar. Oh, my God. Javier Bardem, he is just so good in this. Everyone's so good in this. I cannot say that there's a performance in this film that I don't like, but he is so good. And again, it goes back to that whole spectacle angle of it, where it's humorous to see him become so wrapped up in the ideology and in the prophecy. But, that is another way that this stuff wins the audience over. I think there are genuinely people who watch this movie and aren't thinking about the fact that it ends with Paul inciting a holy war. And that's insane. That's insane that this movie has actually, just like the first book, somehow it's flown right over their heads, They're just like Stilgar. It flies right over their heads. And you just see him, because in the part one, there's mystery to him, but there's this boldness to him. He's this powerful leader. And, he's got so much strength. He dominates, every part that he's in, even when it's just him humorously spitting on a table. And it's not like that isn't the case here in part one. He still kind of has that authority. He has that strength, especially in the earlier parts. But, there are people in Fremen who, they aren't from the South, so they're not really wrapped up in the orthodox. But, he is. But, there's, this calmness to it. And he's, he's still sort of strong about everything. But then he just becomes this fanatic. And by the end of it, he's almost like a punchline. And that's kind of terrifying. And yeah, it's just this movie really just nails all of that. And the final duel, man, this tweet is hilarious as shit, but this is literally, someone else pointed out in another tweet about the sort of intimacy of this duel. But yeah, I could feel it when I was watching the film. There's just this erotic nature to this movie, to this fight. And it's really interesting how visually, the movie doesn't dwell too much, especially on the, like, it's mentioned, but, like, it's not being, I don't know how to say this, like, you're not hearing the Reverend Mother spit out of her mouth about how Paul should be a girl every 10 seconds or something. I'm not saying the book's like that. It's not. But, like, just, like, the way that movie is able to convey, like, how in another life, Feyd would have really liked doing taxes with Paul, just through the way that the final fight between them is just, like, strangely erotic. And, like, I mean, obviously that's Feyd's whole thing, is being strangely erotic, but it's rubbing off in Paul, like, just, like, the way they're, like, all grunting and staring at each other, and, like, it's just, there's so much intimacy to it. And it's like, yes, they're equals, but, like, there's also, like, like, they were supposed to have kids, but, that's not how that worked out. And again, just, like, going back to Walken, I love the way he just hobbles around, but still, he's the emperor. You gotta, kiss his boot. But, like, the moment, where he is defeated, Feyd fails him, because he can't fight for shit. And, he has to submit. He has to let Paul be the emperor. He has to let Paul take Irulan's hand in marriage. And, he kneels and he barely kisses his hand. Like, I don't even know if he, like, really does. Like, you see him go, like, but he doesn't really do it. And I thought that was just so great. Because he's just still, even though he is not the emperor anymore, even though he lost big time, he's still full of himself. He's still caught up in it all. And, he's still, this isn't his universe. This is the Bene Gesserit's universe. This is Paul's universe. This is not his. But he thinks he is. He thinks it is because he's been able to walk around in his pajamas all his life. I just think that is really, really good. Everything about this movie is just so good. Denis Villeneuve, they could never make me hate you. I mean, just look at him. This is a man who loves the game. Man, I love this guy. Love him. Love him. Love everyone in this movie. They're all so good. The visuals, so good. Hans Zimmer, I've barely been able to talk about the score. I feel like it's kind of dumb to talk about the score without, playing examples. But, the music is just, it's also part of that. Just enrapturing feeling. And just all of that is just so beautiful. Love this movie. I know this is very different from what I typically do, but I just felt like I needed to get this off of my chest. And I can already feel myself just aching to watch this movie again. But yeah, I think that's it. So yeah.